Candyman, Candyman, Candyman. Yeah, never mind, better safe than sorry actually. Despite the rule of the terror triumvirate, Michael, Jason and Freddy, Candyman was a breath of fresh air in amongst the endless parade of slasher-likes in the late 80s and early 90s. Replacing typical boink-hungry teenagers with very real and unpleasant horrors, Chicago's spectral master murderer garnered a cult all on his own, with several imperfect but fun follow-ups and a sequel-cum-reboot pinned for summer 2021. Despite being unlike other slasher films at the time, it is also surrounded by film facts like a swarm of, well, angry bees. Let's scoop away the gloopy honey to find the treasure trove of the truths beneath. I'm Tilly from What Culture, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Candyman. Number 10. Candyman is not Dean CORLL. We start with something that's less an entry than a disclaimer. Yes, Dean CORLL was a real serial killer, and yes, the press occasionally called him the Candyman. His crimes were committed in the 70s, giving 1992's Candyman plenty of time to reflect on his evil acts. The thing is, it didn't. Candyman rose above and beyond such cheap and nasty thrills. The Clive Barker story the film is based on, called The Forbidden, didn't have a damn thing to do with CORLL. The film actually followed a black urban legend through working class Chicago. A much better story than that of a predatory white paedophile through the suburbs of Houston. CORLL's family just happened to own a candy factory, which he used to lure victims to his home to be abused and later murdered. The film doesn't give CORLL any kind of legacy or glamorized notoriety, which is absolutely for the best. Instead, it opts to tell a story of something more meaningful despite the scares and tragedy. Number 9. Clive Barker's his daddy. I genuinely never thought I'd ever have to say anything like that, but here we are this year, can't get any weirder. The soul of Candyman comes from Clive Barker. The Forbidden was Candyman's inspiration, a short story from Barker's phenomenally produced collection Books of Blood. Yes, they really are called that, this guy isn't particularly subtle. Candyman, Dread, Hellraiser, Lord of Illusions come from that collection. Barker is good at this, most of the time. The Forbidden differs in several core aspects from Candyman, the setting being a Liverpool council estate and not a Chicago housing project, and much of Candyman's exploration of class and race is explicitly American. That said, the story lays out the bones of Candyman's character, striking his theme of a Bloody Mary-like urban legend as a metaphor for the artistic quest for immortality, and the ugly, stupid side of society that so often cuts that quest short. Number 8. He's about graffiti. One of the themes Candyman retains from Barker's original story is that the academic protagonist is studying graffiti. The plot hook, yeah, just let me have this one guys, is clear. On the one hand, graffiti is by nature art for the disaffected and marginalised, a way for people to reclaim the place where they live and work from its nominal owners. On the other, the protagonist is a privileged academic who intends to ride her observations of other people's art right to the top of her ivory tower. It's not like she's cutting anybody a paycheck. That starting conflict sets the tone for Candyman and Helen Lyle's fraught romance. She may be the reincarnation of his love, but she's also appropriating his culture. In a sense, Candyman is claiming Lyle the way graffiti artists claim Cabrini-Green, incorporating her into his story rather than meekly reimagining a background character in hers. Number 7. Tony Todd got real with the bees. For a slasher movie, Candyman is surprisingly real. He occupies a real space and time, his story feels real, entirely natural horrors, and his mouth is full of real bees. Wait, hang on, what? Long before Nick Cage flipped out with a basket of bees on his head, I mean, let's be real, we would also flip out with a basket of bees on our head, Tony Todd actually grabbed a mouthful of stingers just to make a scene work. If you take nothing else from this, take this. Tony Todd is a badass. So is his agent, by the way. Todd had a special clause in his contract. $1,000 per bee sting. He made $23,000. There's your would you rather for the day, my darlings. Would you take $23,000 for 23 bee stings on the inside of your mouth and throat? If not, I think that shows how much of a badass Todd really is. Number 6. He really is from Cabrini-Green. In the US, the Cabrini-Green homes on the north side of Chicago are unfortunately code words for public housing at its worst. Construction was shoddy, upkeep non-existent, and almost no effort was made to curb crime and violence in the area, which rapidly became endemic. Residents were mostly black, often forced there for sheer lack of options due to Chicago's infamous redlining of residential districts based on race. Casey Lemons, who portrayed Bernie Walsh, noted that Candyman was built to be a ghost of that time and place. The film was shot at Cabrini-Green, where several residents understandably took exception to their homes being treated as a backdrop for horror, especially given the real-life horror that took place there every day. That tension informed the whole film, but it pervaded Todd's masterful performance. Number 5. there was almost a completely different cast. Candyman was a career maker for several people involved, notably Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen. It's hard to imagine different performers playing modern horror's most indelible monster/final girl couple. It's damn near impossible to imagine the first choices for each role. Eddie Murphy and Sandra Bullock. I swear to God, this is true. In fairness, Murphy has shown phenomenal range when given the chance. If you haven't seen Dolomite Is My Name, hit Netflix the moment you're done with this video. It's pure joy. Given room to, Sandra Bullock has also turned in superb work at odds with her American sweetheart rep. Still though, really? I think we got the good timeline on this one. Number 4. He knows his Shakespeare. Every great horror icon has their thing. Michael Myers hunts his family, Jason punishes teenage shenanigans with exceedingly elaborate kills, Freddy does wisecracks and surrealism. Candyman has class. Honestly, the film would be almost forgettable without Tony Todd's 1890s diction. It's the near poetry of his dialogue that makes the masterpiece. In fact, some of the time there isn't even any nearly about his poetry. The leitmotif of Sweets to the Sweet comes from Billy Shakes in Tights himself. Better, it comes from Hamlet's tragic Ophelia, mad with grief, strewing the grounds with flowers in memory of her murdered father. The reference evokes Daniel Robertalli's own besetting loss, reminding the well-read audience that before Candyman was ever a monster, he was a bereaved lover who watched his life go up in flames. Also, if you didn't get the Shakespeare reference the first time through, that's fine. What do you think we're here for? We nerd out so you don't have to. Number 3. He's the Phantom of the Opera. On the subject of classic literature and its influence on Candyman, Tony Todd linked his character to another archetype of proto-horror, Eric, the Phantom of the Opera. From Candyman's perspective, after all, the film is a tale of dark romance. He pursues his incarnate love through the maze of a haunted structure that obeys his commands, seeing in her a chance at immortality. The actual Candyman character parallels the Gaston Leroux original just as closely. Tony Todd's Candyman has a shattered body but a beautiful voice, and a mind torn between love, creative inspiration and, well, homicidal need. Todd committed to his flowery dialogue specifically to play up this connection, giving Candyman a more explicit and more tragic goal than the Freddys and Jasons of cinema. Number 2. He was a hypnotist, and so was his director. Premiering in 1992, Candyman was a relative latecomer among slasher royalty, and had the privilege of learning from other films' mistakes. One key element both Tony Todd and director Bernard Rose wanted to avoid was excessive screaming. Both considered it overdone and too easy to laugh at. Instead, actors agreed to be hypnotised for certain scenes. Madsen spent whole scenes hypnotised, adding an otherworldly quality to Helen's interactions with the Candyman. Todd noted being tranced out helped him deal with minor stresses like the aforementioned mouthful of bees, and sought to add rhythms of hypnosis to his speech and movement, conveying Candyman's power to seduce as well as destroy. Number 1. In a film called Out for Racism, he arguably broke ground for black monsters. Candyman inspired serious dialogue about the role of race in horror fiction on its release in 1992. Many critics accused the film of, in the words of Devil in a Blue Dress director Carl Franklin, playing on white middle-class fears of black people. In response, Candyman director Bernard Rose took time away from shooting to meet with the NAACP. He characterised their view as liberating, saying, "Why shouldn't a black actor be a ghost? Why shouldn't a black actor play Freddy Krueger or Hannibal Lecter? If you're saying that they can't be, it's really perverse." The greater discussion to be had is embodied in the Candyman character. Tony Todd's indelible performance ranks with the greatest in horror history, and for years it was the only one of its kind. Even the most transgressive horrors shied away from the real nightmares that Candyman embodied. A free black man murdered by a lynch mob for loving a white woman, now set free to wreak well-earned vengeance. You can still count the number of black slashers on one hand, and it took almost 30 years, 1992 was 28 years ago, yes, apparently millennials hate it too, but I'm too young to get involved with that discussion, for films like Get Out and Antebellum to pick up Candyman's ball and run. Before that, Daniel Robertalli stood alone in America's shadow, sole reckoning for the country's original sin. Beat that for a monster, especially when the events of this year can be taken into account, making Candyman perhaps even more prevalent today. That's our list. Know of any other fun facts about Candyman that nobody else does? Feel free to drop them in the comments below. I've been Tilly Owen, Tizzle Owen over on the socials, and this has been What Culture. If you've enjoyed these videos, please feel free to like, share and subscribe and swing by another time. In the meantime, look after yourselves and each other, and thanks for watching.